They're doing as excellent a job as possible interacting with the public they serve. And we've obviously been a part of that process and have already announced some reforms that I think are that take a step in the right direction. But there are more reforms to be announced. We're going to make some of those today. Others we're still working our way through. We're going to release some information today that I think will be important for the public to digest and help understand and process what happened on May 30th. And then I think I might just want to talk a little bit about where the investigation is on the events that took place at those protests on May 30th. So I think that's kind of the run of the show, as it were. A couple new policy announcements, overview, and then a snapshot of where we are on May 30th. Because again, as I have said, as we talk about the proper response to what's happening in our country right now, you have the need to reform police procedures. That's a crucial part of it. Within the subject heading of police, we here in Toledo have the need to better understand what happened on May 30th. But then separate and beyond that, I continue to believe and have said in the past that we also need to use this moment to make sure that we are also investing in programs that address the root causes of some of the frustration I think that exists in this country, and whether those are the historic disparities and inequities in education, healthcare, job training, housing, whatever the case may be. I think of things in terms of those two categories. So, beginning with policing. Though there are larger issues of reform that we are working our way through, as I've said, I know there is a lot of interest in what happened on May 30th. And even though it was a localized event, and even though the experiences in other cities aren't necessarily the same as what happened here, that remains a crucial part of this process. And to build the trust and accountability we want, we know that we have to allow the public to feel comfortable that we have given the events of that day the review and respect, or the review that is needed as a means of respect to the public that was there that day, many of whom are still upset by what they saw. Toward that end, by the end of the day today, we are going to release the police audio, the radio channel chatter that took place that day. I believe it's 2 hours and 40 minutes. I may be off by a minute or two, but it's roughly well, here, since I have a paper in front of me folded, let me double check. 2 hours and 40 minutes of audio. It was a multi-hour event, of course. Our audio only begins recording when someone is talking. So even though the event may have taken 7, 8, 9 hours, it only starts recording when a command officer is speaking to a patrolman or vice versa. So when you take all of the events that took place in and around here on May 30th, you really have 2 hours and 40 minutes of compressed conversation. We want to make sure that that is available for public scrutiny. So today, Toledo Police is going to make that available to the public. It is surprising to me that there are still some folks who I think are unaware that the events of that day are being reviewed. I don't know if they did not know that, or maybe in the cloud of all the information of that's what's happening around the country, that maybe got lost in the shuffle somehow. But there is an internal affairs review that is underway and has been ever since the first part of June, analyzing the actions that took place that day by our officers and seeking to ascertain whether mistakes were made or policies were violated. That process is underway. In fact, the first phase of that process has completed. It is I know this is an emotional time for a lot of people. It's a time of great passion and frustration, I think, on all sides of this debate. And so there are some people who are desperate for the investigation to be concluded, and I get it. I want to let the public understand this, that the first phase of the process, which is now completed, could take, by union contract and state law, as much as 100 days. Could take 100 days. In fact, I think some of the Blades reporting has indicated that it could take 100 days. We finished that first wave of the process last week, and we did it in 18 days. So we shaved 82 days off the process. Now, I know there are still going to be folks who are frustrated that it's not done yet, and why is it taking so long, and can't you see it's right there on video? I get it, I understand that, and I respect it. What I am saying, though, is that there are laws that have to be followed, contracts that have to be honored, and within a time frame that could have taken 100 days, we finished phase one in 18 days. We're now moving on to phase two, and there are a number of other steps in this process, all of which we believe will be concluded in July. I believe that if we can go from the incident itself on May 30th to a final determination and decision as to the actions that took place today and whether they were within the rules, not within the rules, whether discipline is needed or not needed, if we can be at that moment within 2 months and have a completed process, that would be, I believe, an example of moving this process along as quickly and as fairly as it can be. Remember, in other cities where things like this happen, it takes several months. In the case of Chicago, it took several years for this process to be done. We believe that it will be done in July. That will be not quickly enough for some. That will seem like a rush job to others. This is a very emotional time, and I understand that people are on edge in a lot of ways. I don't have the luxury of living in either extreme camp. We have to do what is fair and responsible, and that is what we are doing. So I want the public to know that the events of that day are being investigated. I can't believe that folks did not know that was happening, but apparently some didn't. So it is, and in fact, the first phase of it, which could take over 3 months, was finished in less than 3 weeks. And we believe the entire process will be over by July. When it is over in July, that is when we will be able to release the body cams and dash cams and other items like that I know are of continued interest to the public. We'll release the audio today. The video will come when this review is completed. We have already established going forward, because while there is interest in what happened on May 30th, I continue to be focused on where we go from here. I think we've already seen enough and learned enough to know that going forward, we are going to ban the use of military-style camouflage from our officers. So at an event like the one we had on May 30th, you will not see them dressed in sort of, military camouflage, which does give the sense that they are in perhaps an occupying military force as opposed to a team of public servants looking to protect the public. So that is an important change we are making. I think we feel comfortable saying that today, that we're not going to have our officers in camouflage. There are other changes and reforms that we are working our way through that we might be in the position to announce soon. And finally, something that we have mentioned in the past, but now can provide an update on, the moving of internal affairs out of this building, where it has literally been since the 1920s, will be completed on Monday, August 3rd. So Monday, August 3rd, internal affairs will not be behind me. Instead, will be on the 19th floor of Government Center, providing a neutral site that we believe will provide a more open and fairer location for citizens to make a complaint against the police if they feel as though they need to. We continue to meet with protesters, faith leaders, civil rights groups, police unions, and other city officials to make sure that we get this right. But to a fault, we are not guided by emotion. We are doing this soberly and thoughtfully, and taking the time to get it right. And so we just wanted to provide an update today on really on the release of the audio, the timeline of the investigation, the timeline of when internal affairs will move, and to announce that military-style camouflage is not going to be used by our officers going forward. Chief, would you like to add anything?
I will be very brief. Regarding the audio tape, people are going to say, like the mayor said, why only 2.5 hours? If our system recorded the entire 14 hours, the file would be so ungodly big, we wouldn't know how to even get it out there. So it was designed to only record when someone's talking. That being said, we reached out to Lucas County 911 Center today to see if they can somehow do the entire 14 hours, even with the dead space, just so people can have the transparency and think that we didn't doctor the audio. So we're working on that now. Hopefully I'll know by the time we're done with this press conference that they can do that, but they're working on it now. And just real briefly about the uniforms. You know, we get that people think that the camo looks militaristic. But what people have to understand also is that police departments across this country are paramilitary organizations. They're military-like. So, I mean, we wear uniforms, we have a rank structure, simply because of the work that we do. But we are going to go back, we're going to ban that type of uniform, and we're going to go back to just solid black for our SWAT team.
Okay. There are other parts of this, obviously. City Council is working its way through a series of reforms pertaining to the Citizen Police Review Board, a number of ordinances that are already before Council, some others that were just introduced last Friday. So we all have a piece in this. Council has a piece, the administration has a piece, and we're taking steady but thoughtful steps on how to get this right.